Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure, as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. Do you want to become a better shooter, reduce flinch, protect your ears, and just overall enjoy shooting your gun that much more? Then there's no better way to do that than by adding a suppressor to the end of your barrel. Be sure to check out Huxwrx Safety Co, as they are a leader in the suppressor world with their OSS Flow-Through Technology, virtually eliminating blowback and toxic gas that can affect weapon system performance and shooter health. To find out more about Huxwrx, go to huxwrx.com. That's huxwrx.com, and go get yourself a suppressor for your upcoming hunts. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by OnX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is OnX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, OnX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust OnX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about OnX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt. And check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. If you're in the market for optics, I want you to go check out blackdiamondoptics.com. Black Diamond Optics offers world-class sporting and tactical optics, including thermals, all at wholesale pricing, direct to consumer. They are going to be partnering up with us for 2023, and I want to start pointing you over towards their direction. Check out Black Diamond Optics. If you've got any questions about it, shoot us a message. Love to hear from you. Be blessed, everybody. All right, guys, if you're looking for a better way to stay hydrated this coming hunting season and on all your adventures in the future, go check out hardsidehydration.com. Their swig rig is awesome, an absolute game changer when it comes to staying hydrated. I get tired of playing around with any water bladders in my bag and having to remove things to get to them and the chance of them puncturing and all that. So what Hardside did, take Nalgene's, got multiple sizes, and you're attaching your hose straight to that. Keep it on the outside of your pack, a lot easier to use. They also have a lot of other cool things. Go check out hardsidehydration.com. Use the code SOULSEEKERS10. That's all one word. Save yourself 10% at checkout. Hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Be blessed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I am joined by a fascinating individual and somebody who I came across through social media. The power of social media can be used for our benefit or our detractor at the same time, and so it's all about how you go about using it. Well, I noticed Tiffiny made a post on LinkedIn, of all places, that I follow somebody else. They commented, they liked it, and I read her post, and it really spoke to me. So before we talk about Tiffiny and everything that she's doing down in the state of Florida, I want to talk about our 6 pillars. So at Soul Seekers Podcast, we have 6 pillars to what we stand for. The first one is mentorship. The second one is community. Third is self-discovery. Fourth is natural connections. Fifth is conservation. And the sixth one is primal adventure. When it comes to mentorship specifically, that is, our slogan, mentorship is conservation. We always talk about you can never outgive good. And if you want hunting to last for generations to come, then it starts by investing in the hearts and lives of other people. We talk about it as mentorship is paramount to growth and success in all aspects of life, and a mastery of topic is displayed when it is able to be retaught to others. So you sharpen your own saw when you start to mentor other people. It's the ultimate way to own accountability. By mentoring, you sharpen yourself through the foundation of knowledge and answering the questions of why and how. Why do I go about doing things the way I do? How do I go about doing things? And then mentorship leads to hunter recruitment, retainment, and reactivation while simultaneously creating a legacy to be proud of. So we define mentorship here at Soul Seekers by the words love and time. You invest time into people, and ultimately what you're doing is just loving them. And that is a way to serve our community. To make an impact, you have to reach the heart of others. And once again, you can never outgive good. So that is a little background on why I connected with Tiffiny, and we're going to talk about her story because I've only spoken to Tiff a few times, one time specifically. And when she was telling me her story, I was like, wow, this is exactly why I started everything that I do. So without further ado, our guest, Lola of the South on Instagram, but Tiffiny Sanders, without further ado, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm doing just super great.
Yeah, I love it. I'm glad to hear that you're willing to stay up a little later to record a podcast.
Well, like I told you, my kids are basically grown now, so my schedule is a lot more flexible than it used to be in decades past.
I hear you. My 4-year-old, he'll sometimes fall asleep in the car on the way home from school. And if he does, he will not go to sleep on time. And I was like, I got a podcast tonight at 8:30. You're not falling asleep. I was like, stay
Like
awake.
way home,
Right. Get all his brothers. Guys, keep him awake. Keep him awake. So
all about.
I love it. So Tiffiny, tell everyone here that's joined us for this Instagram live and this podcast who you are, what you do, and what you stand for, because obviously that is why we decided to come together and share your story. And this is about you and highlighting everything that you believe in tonight. Um, with that being said, open it up, and I'd love to hear more.
Well, first of all, I'm a wife. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We just celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary in April. I actually forgot and thought it was our 25th, and somebody had to correct me. But that's what happens when you life in decades. You start losing a year here and there. And we raised four children. So we have three boys and a daughter. Three of them are married and out of the house. We have grandbabies. So I'm a wife first. I'm a mom second. I'm a Lola. That's where the Lola comes from. That's my grandma name. But also too, the word that how the word Lola translates to me as a grandmother. I've done a lot of nonprofit crisis work. I'm also a registered by career. And I got into that because I want to help people. And so I've done a lot of crisis work. And what I've noticed is a steady theme. As many times a grandmother will kind of step in as when a parent either has taken a destructive road or whatever, and they kind of come in and mother that child kind of like their own child. And most people have a memory of a grandparent or a great grandparent. And so when I thought about how I wanted to words, that's kind of twofold. I wanted to come in kind of like a grandmother that just kind of mothers people who don't belong to her per se and helps mentor them along, but also too from the aspect of being a Filipino woman. Lola of the South is a little bit contradictory, like a Filipino grandmother of the South. That kind of so there's a lot that goes into that, but really at the heart of things is to me is people. Anything and everything to me in life is a tool to reach people. And there was a time when I didn't feel that way. I think the post that you're referring to, I was thinking back to a time in the past when I thought that being an introvert meant that I hated people.
Mm.
And that, to me, that seems to be a common thought that introverts just hate people. That's not actually what I've come to realize is that introverts dislike cheap interactions with people. And so it's not, I've talked to some people that are like, oh, I can't tolerate small talk. It's not that. You've got to have some small talk. But it's kind of like I have my fake sonar. And when I sense that somebody is all about themselves, all about safe self gain, I don't know, I just kind of shut down to that type of person. And I feel like I'm always looking for the type of people that are looking for a connection, that are looking for someone to reach in and maybe help them in some area. And the time that I spent as a nurse in the ER, that's where I started out. I noticed something. I'm always kind of doing my own little human experiments as far as the way I socially interact with people. And I noticed that part of what drew me to the ER was that when people are in crisis or they're facing the unknown, they are just wide open. And that was the first part. And then the second part, I started realizing where I might see dozens of patients a night. And over the course of my nursing career I've seen thousands. And they may be a face in the crowd to me, but because of where I intersected them in their life, they will remember me for the rest of their life. I learned that as a nurse. So I kind of brought that into the outdoor field where, um, like I said earlier on my reel, my name really means nothing in the outdoor world. And that's fine to me because what matters are the individual people who will never forget me, not because I was so great, but because I either walked them through a period of unknown in their life, or I taught them something new, or I empowered them and made them feel like more self sufficient. And those are the interactions that I crave because they feel like eternal interactions.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a powerful statement. We haven't even dove into this idea of like this mentorship within hunting and why we're actually gathered here tonight. But what you're saying and sharing is very poignant. I heard today on social media posts of all places that it said if you don't like your job, then you need to reevaluate how you view it. Because if you are viewing everything through a lens of servitude, being a servant of all, right? In the Bible, and I come from a Christian background and Bible believing background of, we're called to be servants to all, right? How can we serve you? How can we serve others? How can we bless people and share the good word? Love people. And so this video that I saw on social media said, if you don't love your job, then it's time to change your perspective to a lens of how can I serve humanity? And when you view your job as a opportunity to serve humanity, then it changes everything. So I've been a school teacher for 16 years, and I have not necessarily been the happiest in that job or wanted to stay in that career field. And, it's easy to be like, oh man, no one cares. I don't care, and just check out. But ultimately, there are those small seeds that are constantly getting planted. And we may not reap those rewards right away, but we don't do it for the reaping of the reward. We do it in servitude. And if we can change how we view the world, not what this job can do for me, but what I can do for this job and what I can do for humanity, then that really allows us to open up not only in that specific role, but how we view the rest of the world as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the key. If the most miserable people are the people who constantly at the front of their mind is the question, what can I get out of this? They're miserable. I've come in contact with enough of them to know whether they were as patients, whether they were in the outdoors, anyone whose focus is self gain. They're just really miserable people to be around. You feel how unvaluable you are to that person,
Hmm.
and I don't, I never want to make someone feel that way. I can't say that I've never made someone feel that way. I think those are the moments that probably goad me on maybe to try to redeem myself because we all have our off days. But those days that I consider possibility that I made somebody feel small or invaluable, um, that that breaks my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the post that you made on LinkedIn 2 weeks ago is what how I first connected with you and your story, and I'm going to read what you wrote on LinkedIn, because this was my first interaction with you and seeing it. So for all the people who are listening and following along, it says, I spent the morning of National Hunting and Fishing Day helping 17 people complete their hunter safety certification. It's the second weekend of bow season. The first day, the temperatures dipped into the 50s, and my cellular trail camera was sending pictures of deer moving during the whole class. Could I have stayed home and hunted instead? I could have. Yet I have reached a place in my journey where teaching is the way of life to newcomers. Or, excuse me, teaching this way of life to newcomers has reached the same level of excitement as enjoying this way of life myself. Instilling confidence, imparting wisdom, and leaving a positive, indelible mark on the life of another person gives these trips around the sun some real meaning. It's a beautiful Florida day. Get out there and explore a great state, and even better, invite someone to join you. That spoke to me, and at that point I was like, oh, okay, I got to figure out who this person is, because what you did is a selfless act to say, hey, as a whitetail hunter, which I'm learning the ways of whitetail hunting here in Texas, that as soon as there's a cold snap, you got to be out there hunting, because that is when the deer are moving and your opportunities are going to go up. And yet you were spending your time helping with hunter safety, and like that's a phenomenal thing. And I want to commend you for that.
Well, I think back with that, I heard one podcast. It wasn't the most recent one; it was the one before that. Um, of course, I'm terrible with names, but the guy that had gone and hunted in Africa, and y'all were talking about, but you were talking about the kind of the different phases you move through as a hunter, and I know I'm going to get more opportunities. Hopefully, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not how long I have here, but that the first time that those students were really exposed to hunters outdoors, most likely. And, I realized that favoring those, I actually borrowed this from Bob Goff because he's one of my favorite authors, but he talks about these inciting incidents in people's life, that there are these day-to-day things, but then there's what he calls these inciting incidents, that those moments kind of shift someone's journey or just really make a big impact. And I really believe that a life that collects as many inciting incidents as possible on the behalf of others is going to be more fulfilling. And so, not, and that, of course, that kind of sounds like it's from a selfish standpoint, but what I found is that when you pick up that attitude of servitude and you make that your way of life, you can feel completely empty, like you've got nothing to give. And there's this really cool thing that happens, and I think it's a spiritual currency. But when you step out and you move towards someone feeling empty, but you're going to try to give them something that you feel like you don't have, there's this miraculous thing that happens somewhere along the way where not only by the time you get to that person are your hands full to give them something, but somewhere along the way, your heart was filled at the same time.
Hmm.
And in all honesty, I can't imagine the more I spend my life that way, the more I can't get enough of it. And every time you teach someone a new skill, whether it's in the outdoors, I'll farm, I really am passionate about health and fitness and wellness. But every time you teach somebody a why of something and they understand it and it clicks and you see it click in their minds, um, that is that's altered their path, because you just expose them to a truth that they didn't previously have access to. And it's so easy to just share, because everybody knows something that somebody else doesn't know, and it's just when you share those things, um it just feels like giving away a more It just me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing to give away the things that you love and
Yeah.
to watch what happens when it like the universe naturally brings it back to you. What's up, Soul Seekers Nation? Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate it. As a reward, I have some discount codes for you to use if you are in the market for a brand new hunting pack. Go check out initialascent.com and Initial Ascent packs. They are made in America. Their one piece carbon frame is an absolute game changer. We run their packs, we love them. And you can save 5% at checkout by using the code SOULSEEKERS. That's all one word. Also, for those of you who are archery hunters and you are tired of shooting at dots on a target, check out deadnutsoutdoors.com for their lifelike 2D archery targets. You can save 20% on all of their products by using the code SOULSEEKERS at checkout. Once again, the code is SOULSEEKERS, all one word. Go check out initialascent.com and Dead Nuts Outdoors. Enjoy the podcast. Right.
Hmm.
You know, I always refer to this idea of loving hunting
Hmm.
as when you eat at a restaurant that you're really excited about. What is the first thing you do when you leave that restaurant and you interact with other people? Guys, have you eaten at this restaurant? Oh, it was phenomenal. Like, oh, everything about it, the setting, the service, the food, blah, people rave about it.
Yeah.
If we as hunters, as a collective, can start understanding and viewing as what we do as the best thing that we have ever experienced, then we're going to start changing the tide of public opinion when it comes to non-hunters. The anti-hunters, they've staked their claim. Like, we get that. It's this people in the middle that are like, okay, I could go either direction. Which way? Give me a reason why I should join your camp. Let me tell you how incredible hunting was, how my life was transformed, the adventure, the amazing things that you get to learn. I just recently did a podcast this last Friday with um, Charles Whitwam of Howl for Wildlife, and we're talking about redefining what a trophy is. So like everyone gets trophies. We might not call them trophies, right? We get a trophy at your job. It's called a paycheck. Like, hey, I earned my trophy, right? Or maybe as a nurse, it's when somebody is like, hey, thank you for everything that you did. It really impacted me. Or thanks for loving my loved one. Or however it is. Like, we get trophies. We are constantly searching for these rewards, right? Either it's a stick or a carrot. What do we want to go for? But if we can speak about hunting in this mindset of servitude towards others and that it was the most incredible thing and that you have to try it.
Right.
You got to try it because experiences provide perspectives. Otherwise, you're just left with opinions, and opinions don't hold any like foundation to them.
And that's why to me, the best way to expose someone to how great the outdoors and hunting is to take them with you. Because no matter what you say, when you take them along with you and they see the way you respect the wildlife around you, the way you love, the way you even feel sadness, the
Mhm.
way you, all the range of emotions. When you're pointing out different things like teaching how to track and looking at different sign and or seeing the sunrise or the sunset in a place that they have never seen it look like that before. It's just it speaks for itself. And I've had several friends who they weren't anti-hunters, they were kind of in the non-hunter uh, section, and they respected what I did and they care for me and they knew how I love my animals and care for my animals, having a farm, and how I love and care for people. They know me to be a compassionate person, but maybe that part of my life didn't quite make sense to them. But over time, because I do believe mentoring it's the long game. It's years a lot of times. Over time, as they watch your life, it speaks for itself, and they become convinced because they know you And if you're a person of compassion and integrity, then that sets hunting in the outdoors in a whole different light that they'd never experienced before.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important. It's so important for them to see that look in your face and just to see how you love it and how you care for the outdoors. It moves mountains as far as opinions are concerned.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, listen, I was a camp counselor in upstate New York for a summer, the type of camp where you live in the bunkhouse with the kids all year long and you go pick them up on buses from downtown Manhattan, like outside of the Metropolitan Art Museum. That's where they would show up. And these kids grew up in the concrete jungle and then we're out in nature teaching sports and doing different things and living with these kids. And what I have come to know about humanity is that we are so tunnel vision on how we view our life. And it comes from a lack of experiences, but we don't know what we don't know. So if somebody doesn't come along and say, hey, have you ever tried it this way? Oh, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about looking into this? Then we're just going to live out this definition of insanity, doing the exact same thing over and over, but expecting different results. So when we get to share our stories, share our experiences, take people with us and let them get hands on, it will revolutionize people's lives.
Absolutely. But it matters that you're a good, decent person who cares about others because I mean, all of us we're getting pretty good because of dealing with um, self-serving people, and then social media kind of blowing that up. I think all as the human race have really become good detectives as far as determining who is genuine and who's not.
Mhm.
People can tell very quickly you don't actually care about them and you don't actually care about what you're. So it is really important to, if you're going to mentor, to spend some time in self reflection and really think about what it is you want out of it. What are you truly going after? And I'm not saying that no one should mentor if there's any selfish gain within their heart, because I've seen many people that started out helping with a youth hunt or whatever, maybe just because they wanted to be around the outdoors or maybe they thought they would get but when you spend time in that setting, it changes you.
Right.
And so I'm not saying don't go out there unless you're wholeheartedly self-sacrificial. Yes, please volunteer. But when you move up into a place where you're like, okay, I'm ready to influence people for the good. And influence is such, I've almost come to dislike that word a lot because of social media, because some of the influence is influencing what? I mean, it's things that just don't seem to matter. They have no lasting value. So to me, an influencer is somebody who sees a person, and I think that we're gifted certain people that only our personality can really kind of click with and reach. I think those people cross our path, and we look at that person, we say, okay, I'm going to grab onto you and I'm going to be in it for the long haul. You have to know who you are and what you want out of it and why you're doing it, because if you don't know, then they're going to point that out, they're going to pick that out pretty quickly. If it's just something to do, something to get some accolades for. um and what's so interesting to me is how my experience has been that in order to truly love the outdoors and truly love hunting and truly love and save this way of life, you have to love people just as much, because
Mhm.
it takes people to save it. So if you love the outdoors but you hate people, it's a dead end road. You're going nowhere.
Yeah.
And um, it's all connected. And you have to love people and you have to mentor people if we're going to say preserve. I know that's another
Yeah. We don't use the term preserve in hunting.
save, rescue. I don't know. all these words. I constantly have this list. And now we're not allowed to use this word, and we're not allowed to use that word.
No,
Like, in 5 years, they'll forget.
I'm all about taking language and owning it, making it ours, right? So, yeah, it's really interesting. I was thinking back to college. I had a college professor in probably my last year, right before I became a teacher, and he told me, he's like, "You're gonna be allergic to some people." Because you don't doesn't matter what you do or what they do, like there's just some people you just might be allergic to. And I was like, that's an interesting way of saying it. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean you don't lead with love. You don't lead with kindness. You don't lead with, or you need to continue to lead with the fruits of the spirit: patience, kindness, gentleness, meekness, you know, faithfulness. Be faithful to see things through all the way. And when you live in that manner, then you are creating a foundation and a welcoming environment for people to experience things. It's really interesting coming to this, learning how to hunt, but coming to it from an educator perspective, from a school teacher, like I was born to teach concept. What I know about teaching and what I know about students and human beings is that if people don't find success within a time period, relatively short time period, now success gets to be defined in their own terms, not in our terms. But if they don't find some sort of success, then they're going to give up and quit and never return back to it.
Of
Whether
course, yes. That.
whether they are embarrassed,
Mhm.
ashamed, scared, or just disliking it now because it's like, well, I obviously can't be good at this. I'm done.
Yeah, because we all want to be good at what we try. I something that I picked up from my work in crisis nonprofit ministry type work is that you have to sit down and, like you said, you have to figure out what success is to that person, because it's going to be so different, and you can't look at somebody through the lens of where you are right now, because if they were where you were, then they wouldn't be coming to you. So that's not fair for them to come to you for help and then for you to instantly put them in a box according to your life experience and where you're standing right now and where you've grown to. So you have to define what success is to them, and then you have to kind of supply them with some low hanging fruit,
Mm.
some small wins, um, because we all need that. Break it up into tiny little bites where it's easy to reach out, because they'll get to the end. If you overwhelm them too quickly, you're setting them up for failure. And something that you said in that podcast when you were talking about giving, I think you gave a backstrap to somebody,
Yeah.
and you're gifting this. I mean, that is the choicest. I mean, talk about a gift. I mean, you love somebody or you care about somebody, you really want them to get hooked on hunting in the outdoors when you gift them backstrap. I understand that totally. But you said that you failed to tell them how to prepare it,
Yeah.
and because they didn't know how to prepare it, they thought it was horrible. I mean, this thing that you gave is like a price choice treasure to them, because they didn't have all the steps. It actually kind of became like almost like a curse, and then you have to figure out how to redeem that, and it's just, that was such a huge a learning moment.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with mentoring or teaching anybody anything new, is if you drop the concept in their lap but don't give them any check marks or any small increments that they can achieve easily, then you're right. They'll lose interest, or they'll just convince themselves, because we all have this negative narrative that's trying to take over in our mind. They'll convince themselves that it's just not their thing and they're not good at it.
Right. Right. 100%. Yeah. So if any of you guys didn't catch that podcast, that was with Stephen Miller of Bow Hunting AZ. We did that 2 episodes ago. That was released 2 weeks ago. I talked about, I gave one of my older neighbors who never hunted
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. As a thank you, I got more discount codes for all of you. If you are in the market for anything in regards to calls, whether it's elk calls, turkey calls, deer or predator calls, you can save 15% on all Rocky Mountain hunting calls by using the code Soul Seekers. That's all one word. And if you're in the market for hard side hydration, a better way to hydrate, go check out hardsidehydration.com. Use the code SoulSeekers10 to save 10%. And we also have a discount at Graxaw.com. Graxaw is the leader in ultralight game bags and other backcountry gear. Light, fast, and efficient is their motto. Use the code SoulSeekers, all one word, to save 10% at checkout.
But was like maybe open to it since I was his neighbor and I talked about it, how it was like this super cool thing. I gave him backstrap from an elk that I shot, but I never taught him how to cook it. And he just straight put it on a gas barbecue and cooked it like anything else. And I know from my own experience that cooking wild game on a gas barbecue is not the most
Uh,
ideal.
Probably shoe leather. It was
Yeah.
probably
Yeah. So, the learning experiences. Now, you talked about the low hanging fruit, the small wins, and I want to just share some of that because I have personal experience in regards to that. I've hunted. It's only been 9 years since I took my hunter safety course and got into this, and so you're all excited. And you're like, I'm gonna start killing my first animals. I can't wait. Blah blah blah. Yeah, and then you go out and you don't see anything. And then you go out and you don't see anything. And you go out and you don't see anything. You're like, man, what is going on? I have a lot to learn.
no animals out.
And so my small wins ended up being okay. Number one, I was getting out because taking that first step of being like, okay, instead of staying home on a weekend and watching college sports or professional sports or doing anything else, I'm going to dedicate this to going out in nature. And that provides a reward within itself of a renewal of our spirit and a connectivity with our world around us different than we normally live because we live such an insulated life. Uh, we think about like rubber being an insulator. We wear rubber bottom shoes that insulate us from the connectivity of our universe. And so we go out there and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, birds are chirping or all this, and it starts coming alive and becoming real. So, and then it's like, man, oh, I saw my first track. I saw a deer track, learning which way deer walked based off of their tracks. That was a big win, and then it's like, okay, this is a game trail. Okay, so I'm starting to recognize these small wins. And what I realized, I was treating myself like a kid. If I'm going to bring my kid along to teach my child how to hunt, I want it to be fun and exciting and engaging. And how do you do that? You do scavenger hunts. Okay, guys, we're going to be looking for this, this, this. If you see any of this,
Tell your team.
mark it as a win. Like, oh, I got to see this today. I got to see a track. I saw a game trail. And all of a sudden, this destination, because we are in humanity, instant gratification. I want it now. Fast food, instant programming, like light speed. I purchase, I get 2-day delivery, Amazon, whatever it is, we want it now. And so if we are constantly focused on that end result, then it feels like it's going to take forever to get there. And it's like, oh, well, I'm bored. Oh, I'm bored. Oh, I don't like this. But if we can make small little benchmarks, okay, this is the next place I'm going to get to. And then this is the next place I'm going to get to. I'm still this year. My big win is if I can see the animal in which I'm pursuing. Then I'm like,
Yes.
I'm a hunter. I know, I know how to find animals.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that said, that so far in just life in general. Um, the first decade being a mom and being married and all these things, I was so set on this someday And everything I did was to get to Sunday. Well, when I get it all together, well, when everything is organized, well, when everything's in order. And what happened is when you are completely focused on someday, or like I said, the end result, it feels like you never get there. It always moves. It's a moving target. And when I shifted my perspective and started focusing on each day and saying, I'm going to be present in this day, and I'm going to conquer this day and be in this day to the best of my ability, what I started realizing was determining to have a good day strung together into weeks and strung together into months, and it turned into years of good years. And that same idea transfers over into the outdoors. If you make every step and every moment, not only does that make you a better outdoorsman and a better hunter, because there's more self-awareness, you're paying attention, which eventually will get you to your end goal. But instead of that day being like, okay, well, my goal was to kill a deer and I didn't kill a deer, so it was wasted. Instead, like you said, each one of those little things that you saw, whether it was an insect you never saw before, or maybe you saw a hummingbird in a nest, or all those little things, those build together. So then now this becomes it was an adventure that was full of all these little landmarks. And so yeah, that transfers over into no matter what we're dealing with in life, not just hunting in the outdoors. It's just an important thing. Or quit being so focused. Yes, be goal oriented, but if all you're focused on is the goals, the end goals, then everything between here and there feels like a waste.
Yeah. Well, and you use the word present.
Mm.
If all we are focusing on is that end, then we lose our opportunity to be present in the moment.
Well, I mean, think about really quick being a mom trying to set up birthday parties for kids. I would try to do these extravagant birthday parties, and what I realized happened was I would be so stressed out. My whole family was walking on eggshells just to make this perfect birthday party. And what do you think my child remembered? He remembered how stressed out I was. He remembered how the whole family would. So it's like if you put all of your eggs and all in your effort into getting to this end goal, then the rest of the journey is miserable,
Mhm.
and makes it miserable for anybody else that is unlucky enough for you to drag them along with you. It's just if you really want to make the outdoors and hunting um, impactful, then you have to present it the same way. You have to slow down and teach all the little parts, because that's the other thing we do. And this as a teacher, it doesn't matter how much you know if you don't know how to teach it, if you don't know how to pass it on to someone else so that they understand it. And so many times we know something, but we assume that the other person knows those things as well. Maybe it's if you gave somebody a recipe or whatever. If you forget the little things like, oh, well, you need to soften the butter, and you just say 2 tablespoons of butter, all those little things that we assume, oh, well, if you're cooking, those things. They don't, because they're new. So you have to back it way back and explain every step, and like you said, the why behind every step. Because what is fun about that is some things that have become old hat to us because we've been doing it for so long, um, is so fascinating to somebody who is new in the
Yeah.
outdoors. So
Yeah.
it reminds me of like when our kids are little and they're amazed by the trees blowing the leaves. Well, we haven't thought about the trees blowing the leaves since we were probably under 5, but all of a sudden we have to stop and we have to realize, oh, that is kind of cool. That's amazing. Or so those are what I love about mentoring, because it's like you get to relive first that maybe you've become complacent about. It's like you get to see it all over again in
Yeah.
somebody else's
Yeah. In education, I always share with students and really teachers as well, is that in order to reach a level of mastery, how we define mastery of a topic or subject is when you can reteach it to others.
face.
So, you want to become a better hunter,
Yeah.
then learn how to teach it to others, because it's going to sharpen yourself to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and then for the new hunters who are listening to this podcast or whoever have an opportunity to come in contact with mentors, you know, those first couple years of hunting for me, it was I was also a high school football coach and I coached multiple sports and I couldn't get out. My time of field wasn't very much. And so my disappointment from not seeing animals was there. But then I was like, well, I'm also not giving myself a fair amount of time. And so Malcolm Gladwell's book, when he talks about the 10,000 hour rule, is he defines mastery based off of 10,000 hours. If you can put 10,000 hours into a hobby, topic, uh, experience, whatever it is, you will reach a level of mastery. And so
Mm,
I started to think about that. And I was like, okay, when I started having a lot of success in hunting is when I started to have more time afield. The more
right.
time I spent afield out doing and being rather than, thinking about it or dreaming about it, that's when I started finding success.
Mm-hmm.
And by success, I mean coming across animals more and having shot opportunities because ultimately in hunting, that's what we want.
Yeah, just fooling the animal that you can get close enough to even see them in that space. But yeah, that is definitely a very important thing because like I spent a lot of the first parts of my life being a mom and being at home, and I love the outdoors and I spent a lot of time studying and learning stuff. Of course, then it was more magazines. That was way back. But um, I would collect things from magazines and look up stuff like that in books. But once I was able to actually get out there, and sometimes it was just, I am one of those people that I have so many unfavorable mishaps that happen. Either I'll get all the way out to my stand and forgot something really important, like maybe what am I going to use to get this animal? Like I forgot my firearm, or something like that. And it's just one time in particular, I remember I was hunting public land, and I got up super early, got in there super early so I could go really slow and be really quiet. Got all the way to my stand and I had forgotten my rifle.
Mm,
So, what I did instead, because at this time the sun was coming up and whatever, is I started walking with the wind in my face and I found several bedding areas and I marked them. And, so I just was like, I'm not going to waste this. Okay, I can't really hunt this morning. I'll have to come back this afternoon, but I'm going to use this morning. I'm just going to sit here and feel bad about it. Really awesome area, actually, that I never would have found if I hadn't been so determined to make something out of my mishap.
right.
So, yeah.
Right. That's awesome. I got a couple questions for you in regards to you being a hunter safety instructor and then also believing in mentorship because uh, even though being a hunting safety instructor is important and part of mentorship is also completely separate from that. When you are teaching your courses, what's the percentage in your perspective or opinion of adults in hunter safety or kids? And then what are people saying as the reasons of why they want to get into hunting?
Okay. So typically, about half of the classes are kids that have aged out. They can't go anymore without a license. So they're 16, 17, and they're getting their license so they can go on their own. That's usually about half of the class. And then the other half is typically divided. Um, and it's usually you have, well, it's changed a little bit. You used to have a little handful that were coming for concealed weapons license because in Florida, your hunter safety, certificate also doubles as your training for your concealed carry. So you can literally take that hunter safety certificate and take it to the DMV and apply for your concealed carry. So that was probably a quarter of the class at one point, but now that we don't have to have concealed carry in Florida anymore. We're seeing a decline in those numbers. So I'm seeing so that other half is kind of divided between adults that literally are just now being exposed to the outdoors for the first time in their life and they're wanting to get into it, and more women too that
Mm.
are into the outdoors.
Uh,
thing is many times you have moms that'll come along with their child. Maybe they drove them or whatever, and then they end up coming back to get their hunter safety license, do the hunter safety course themselves. So
Sue Tidwell, author of Cries of the Savannah book, she wrote, "My class this week had 5 gals in it, me and 4 10 to 12-year-olds, no boys."
wow, yeah, that's we're seeing more and more of it. It's really exciting. It's becoming more normal for girls to be.
Yeah,
And that's what's fun about being a hunter safety instructor is I can see the look on women and girls' faces when they come in. It's like being a superstar. They don't know you from Adam, but as soon as they see you up there in that FWC shirt with your hat, it's like, this is a girl. Like it there's almost like a ease in their shoulders, like, okay, I don't feel so nervous anymore. And I love that.
yeah. I love it. What are the reasons in which people are taking courses? You mentioned obviously the concealed carry permit, but now Florida is a constitutional carry state, and they support that, which I support as well, and big fan. However, what are the reasons that people are taking the hunting, like, and getting into the hunting course?
They're wanting, I think the pandemic scared a lot of people when they realized how fragile our food system is. And so we're still seeing there was a big influx of students coming and getting their hunter safety course completed and learning to hunt because they wanted to be able to get their own food. Um, that really opened a really neat door because some people that maybe were previously vegetarian or even maybe weren't vegetarian but didn't really agree with hunting your own meat,
Hmm.
um, they got a little scared and realized, like, okay, what do I do to secure the food that I need for myself and my family if it's not, because people were going to the store and it wasn't there. And so that's trickling down some, but there was a big spike of people coming in like, no, I've got to figure out how to do this for myself. And I think the education about how hunting and conservation is so intimately connected is starting to work. I'm seeing people that are really starting to understand that, okay, wait a minute, hunting is really necessary. And they're understanding the balance and they're understanding also, too, that if I'm going to eat meat, I need to be responsible for all the steps. I can't shirk the unlovely parts on somebody else so that I can have meat. So that was a big spike for a while where people that the pandemic really scared them as far as access to food. That's trickling down a little bit now. It's kind of evening out. We still have a few here and there. But now that we're constitutional carry, pretty much everyone in the class, they want to go hunt. So that's where we are.
I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you shared, we're going to shift gears here for a second. You shared a story with me when we were on the phone this last week about how hunting saved your relationship.
Yeah.
And I want this to be shared if you're comfortable sharing this, because when we talk about trophy hunting, right? And
Hmm.
this misconception of what is a trophy from hunting.
Yeah.
Hunting does so much for people's lives, and we need to be able to articulate it. The
Yes.
freedom of speech is the most powerful amendment to the US Constitution for a reason, that without our voice, everything goes away. There's no power. Our power is found within our voice and speaking up. Let our yes be yes and our no be no, and stand for something or fall for anything, and whatever other cliche or speech or quote that you want to share. We need to be able to articulate this.
Right.
So we need to articulate the wins. And when you told me what happened to you and your relationship, um, I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
This needs to be shared.
So, like I said earlier, my husband and I just celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary. So we met in high school. We're high school sweethearts, and but we got married. We started having babies. Our life kind of split a little bit because I was really focused on raising little ones, and he was working long, grueling hours in the logging woods. And we just got to this place where we were married, but we weren't really partners. And over time, that divide kind of got wider and wider. And in all reality, probably the first 19 or 20 years of our marriage were kind of just like just doing life, but
Yeah.
not really united. And one of the only things that we had in common was hunting in the outdoors. Now, I got into it more and more as my children got older and were more independent. So even though we weren't united or connected on any other front, we were completely disconnected spiritually, emotionally. Hunting was this thing that we had. And I believe God used that to preserve a thread of our relationship until we got to the place where a few short years ago, our marriage was completely um, healed and transformed. And now we are so unified. So, this thing that held us together by a thread, I mean, it really did, it kept us together. But what is so awesome about that is it kept us together when we were not unified. But now that we are, holy moly, hunting for us is like, I can't even really put words to it. We love it so much because it carries so much more weight now than it would have, because now we're both mature enough to recognize that in all reality, I mean, I think for me, I was learning, and so I wanted to go out. I didn't want to go by myself. I wanted to learn these things from my husband. His family had been a hunting family. I was an adult onset hunter, so I didn't get into it until I met him. And then on his side of it, even though we were disconnected in all these other areas, he was like, I have this wife that loves hunting. Like, I just believe it held us together. God used it to hold us together in places that we probably would have snapped if we didn't have that. And, there were days where we fought like cats and dogs Monday through Friday. And then we got up and we hit the outdoors on Saturday, and it was good. It was a good time. It was like a reprieve from ourselves. It's almost like we became different people out there
Hmm.
in the woods. And I think subconsciously we started craving, and that kind of became our escape. And like I said, a few years ago, right at about 3, when everything shifted and we became this unified partnership, like truly became one. Now the outdoors is the most precious space. Like everything we do revolves around that. As far as any of our downtime, that's what we want to be doing. So that's what our dates are. Valentine's Day, we're hog hunting. I mean, we're just trying to find some way to be outdoors because it's part of our love language now.
Man, so it thank you for sharing that story. Thank you for going through that, and it just speaks back to what we talked about at the beginning of understanding that when we lead with humility and we lead with a this concept of servitude, inherently you do it because you want it, but you never know what's going to come out of it,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And so hunting saved your marriage. Like,
Yeah,
wow, that's a powerful statement.
it
A-
is.
And so often, because I know, and my wife knows, hunting is inherently selfish. It's inherently a selfish act for the majority of people unless they can process it and inwardly reflect to lead to
Right.
that outward correction of it is for me, but it's not just for me. It is for all my community and everyone that I interact with and everyone that I touch. And so you talk about it saving your marriage, and you were like two different people that
Hmm.
you would, during this 9 to 5 grind of the concrete jungle, whether you're a big city or not big city, the minute that you got into nature, there was healing.
There was, yeah. Yep. As if, I mean, you know, there's part of it is just being so enveloped in creation, and it makes the things that were so important and needed to be fought over all week, it made them seem so small. And we forgot about them. And yeah, it truly was a healing. And that's the thing about the outdoors that I want so desperately for others to experience, is that there is so much healing that occurs. I love all types of hunting. I've gotten into waterfowl hunting as of late, even though the things I really love about hunting are the quiet and the solitude and, the time with myself. We got into waterfowl hunting because it was something that the boys loved, and we could be loud and we could cook in the boat, and, all the thing, a nurse's worst nightmare, shotguns, and it's just like World War. But when you walk out into the woods in the dark and you're led only by your sense of hearing, and you're trying to learn all the different sounds, and okay, is that one dangerous to me? Is that just a possum? Is that an armadillo? Is that this? Is that is it a flying squirrel? And then you find your spot, whether it's climbing a tree or sitting down by a tree, and then the world starts to wake up. And this, there's just something that occurs in that moment that you cannot get anywhere else. And it's truly healing.
Yeah.
Whatever you brought in there, you lay down at that moment.
So your story really resonates with me because of two of my brand pillars that I mentioned those earlier on, but I just wanted to retouch them: self-discovery and natural connections. And here's what I wrote, because I'm working on identifying this found and creating my foundation of how I promote hunting and how I promote the outdoors. So here's what I wrote about self-discovery within hunting. At Soul Seekers, we believe in the healing power of nature and what nature provides. By removing ourselves from the constant buzz of society and the algorithms of a digital world, we allow ourselves the opportunity and ability to recharge and to reflect. Self discovery happens through internal reflection, which leads towards outward correction and a deeper sense of meaning and love. So, whether you went out into the woods with a difficult relationship with your husband at the time, you being out there and him being out there, you guys were both able to connect and have a deeper sense of meaning and ultimately love, which then was what brought you guys together and kept you together. The next part is the natural connections, in which I talk about um, how society breeds a high level of insulation from the
Mhm.
natural world, which creates disconnect and a lack of knowledge of the healing powers of nature. So we're constantly insulated from just this, Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, this idea that everything you need is there. Just,
Mhm.
just be present, relax, and yet we're constantly searching and distracted and going. And so we know that everything stems from our creator, and anything that we need can be found within the organic world. In order to improve our connectivity with nature, heal ourselves, and deepen our knowledge and understanding, it requires us to have an open mind while studying the world around us. Your story resonates with me and resonates with why I do what I do. And I'm inspired because of your difficulties, your
Mhm.
challenges. Seeing you overcome your hurdles has
Yeah.
inspired me to be like, okay, keep going,
Yes.
because I
Mm.
know how powerful it is.
Yeah.
And this is why your story is so powerful.
Yeah. Well, that's all it is. When you have a win like that, it's not meant for you to just experience it and you to just sit there and revel and go, oh, look how great my marriage is now. You experience that because you're supposed to take that to someone else. And when they look at you and say, but you don't understand, they can look in your eyes and see that you do understand.
Yeah.
But that's how it spreads. That's how it catches. You take that hope, you take that healing that you found, and you pass it on to someone else. Because if you keep it, it I mean, yeah, your life's great, but you've not birthed anything from that. You've not created more life from that. And I think when you have a win like that, you have an experience like that, it's meant to be shared so that it stays alive. It's meant to be shared so that somebody else can come to that realization and hopefully experience that same kind of win.
Yeah. We love America loves underdog stories, and we love
Yeah.
this idea of rising from the ashes, right?
Yeah.
The uh, the phoenix, right?
Right.
But what makes that so interesting is that you have to go through these dark and destructive and dying to yourself
Mhm.
ideology to then be renewed and rewarded and transformed into this gift that is such a blessing.
Uh, yeah, there is no shortcut. And um, I see this from time to time. We know that relationships in society now are not very lasting. They're not very genuine. It's very difficult to find true, genuine connection, whether it's with a friend or whether it's in an intimate relationship. And it's always interesting to me how someone can sit from the outdoors and look at somebody who's been through 20 or 22 or 30 years of life, and they want that, but they think that they can get that by going and taking that person. And that's not how it works. There is no shortcut. I talk a lot about a word that has become kind of a staple word in my vocabulary is tension, maintaining tension. Um, as society, we want to avoid pressure, we want to avoid conflict, we want to avoid tension. But really, the most meaningful life, the most meaningful self discovery, the most healing occurs when you choose to maintain the tension. You choose to stand in the tension and see what it births from you.
Mm.
And this is something that is not popular. People do not like tension. Now, I'm not saying that there's not, there's this erratic, oh, yeah, I want to fight, I want to be right, I want to voice my opinion. That's different than tension. Um, I heard a quote from Elizabeth Elliot. She was talking about how, the Bible tells us that in order to really live a meaningful life, we have to kind of die to ourselves. We have to take up our cross. And, we always want to think it's this big heroic act, going out in a blaze of glory. And she said something that just kind of rocked me. She said, taking up your cross is a series of meaningless, just menial acts which are distasteful to you. And when she said that, I was like, whoa, that really puts my life in perspective. So it's the string of things through the day that feel monotonous but need to be done. It's the things that I don't feel like doing. Those are the things that really create that well lived life. But willing to stand in the
Yeah. Can I share a story or a different way in which I've heard that?
yeah,
Uh, this was I heard a speech from just some military leader at some point, and he talked about the importance of making your bed
uh,
and how um, if you are somebody who is not making your bed, then you're setting yourself up for a life of disaster uh, because you're not accomplishing the first task of the day.
mhm.
And if you are somebody who can make your bed every morning, then you've already completed the first task of the day. And if you completed the first task, you can complete the second. And if you can complete that, then
Yeah.
it just keeps going.
Or let me tell you, making my bed is like it is the segue to getting out of any funk when it comes to if I'm having a mental struggle or I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling discombobulated. I literally will think to myself, I just need to go make my bed. And if I make my bed, that will just create this domino effect of productive things. But it is, and this is a human problem. We have all these people in this world who are so intelligent politically and intellectually and all these great things, but they can't be nice. And it's like, if you can't do the small things, then really what does it matter how much you know or how loud your voice is or how much influence you have? If you can't do the small, invisible tasks, that's really what you do in secret is what defines what your life in public looks like. I mean, it just is. The how you handle the things that no one will ever see, the things that you will never get any accolades for, that really is what sets the tone for what the rest of your life looks like.
Hmm. Yeah, I always say, well, what does people's browsing history look like? If we could,
Yeah.
if we could see that, that would tell a lot about that individual.
It will. It will. And that's not to be said with shame, because, like I said, there are some real struggles that people have. Um, and I think, you just have to be willing to humble yourself and say, listen, this is something I struggle with, and I'm going to purposely seek out somebody and get help in this area. But again, in order for someone to reach out and better themselves and get help, there has to be someone for them to go to. And that's where the mentors come in. That's
Yeah.
why it's important.
I want to share a little anecdote story here with you because um, I believe that this is poignant for you and your story, but also for all the listeners that hear this podcast. And it comes from some things that I've been taught in my life, but also that I've learned in my life. And it applies to hunting, it applies to mentorship, it applies to action. I was raised by a father who told me to be like a buffalo in a snowstorm. Just stand there and take it. And as I've chewed on that for such a long time, like, okay, just like is like what? Just like be tough nosed and just be like, oh, sure, I am man, I can do this. I was like, well, that doesn't really like inaction is action, right? Not saying something is saying something. And so, those of us who, I want to make sure hunting lasts for generations to come. And if I don't say anything, then I'm doing a disservice. If I'm not doing something, I'm doing it a disservice. I want to constantly promote it. So, I met a friend of mine, Tim Douglas. Shout out to him. He still hosts, but I don't know if he's released any podcast episodes lately. He's from South Carolina, and he does a podcast, The Inspired Way. And his logo is a buffalo. And I had him on as a guest. This is probably maybe 100 episodes ago. And I did a small little series called the Soulful Series with him. 6 episodes where we cover different topics to help us be better humans and better outlook, self-improvement. Well, on that topic, he shared his idea of what a buffalo and a snowstorm is, and I was like, wow, this is very ironic because I was always told just to stand there and take it, like a bad boy or something. Like I don't know, like
All
no,
your fault.
yeah, like it's my fault.
Yeah.
And so how I tie this into mentorship is it takes action. You're going to get the same results if you always do what you've always done. If you want something to change, then it starts with you being the change that you want to see. So he talks about how the buffalo of the American prairies, what's different from them and a cow is as those storms build up off the Rocky Mountains of the West, and you can see those thunderous, ominous, dark clouds and storm is coming. That cows, they will turn away from the storm and try to outrun it. But what happens? That storm always catches up to you. It always is there.
You're just exhausted.
Right. And what he talks about is be like a buffalo. Because what the buffalo does is it will turn and it'll face the storm. And it'll run into the storm. And it'll say, I'm here and I'm going to meet you head on. And through that, when that first buffalo does what happens? It leads by example and it's courageous to others because courage is contagious. And other buffaloes will come and join by the side, and they're able to make it through that storm and be on the other side to a sunny sky, a blue sky, a better life when they
Yep.
face the storm and they run through it rather than trying to constantly run away from it and be like, not today.
Yeah. Well, and when you recognize the fact that, that something that it kind of goes along the same lines of that I've kind of adopted is the idea of leaning into the knife. And when I say that, because I'm medical, that's probably where that comes from. But it makes me think about how just because something is sharp and just because something is painful doesn't mean it's bad for you. And just like if you have a cancerous spot on your body and you need to have it removed, well, if you always avoid that because you're like, yeah, but that's attached to my skin and I'll bleed and it'll cut me and that will hurt. And because of that, you avoid leaning into that knife, then inevitably that cancer will spread and it'll kill you.
Mhm.
But if you lean into that pain, you lean into that sharp blade, yes, it hurts momentarily, but you cut away something that in the end may have been the end of you. And so that's kind of the same concept. It's like just lean into it. And I am notoriously compared to a bull in a china shop. So I tend to just head on into things because I do real like if I'm gonna hit it, I want to go ahead and just get into it. And like you said, I know if I hit it head on, that storm's gonna keep moving. But now it's going past me and I'm going through it. So that is, I love that. That is exactly right. And but when, like you said, when you run from it, all you do is wear yourself out and you get nowhere because it will catch up to you and you will be even more subject to demise because now you have exhausted every fiber of you away from the storm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm putting you on the spot here, but if here is your hallmark statement, like platform, soapbox, whatever. What do you want to share about hunting? What do you want to share about the outdoors?
Mm, it really is about people. And people don't think of it that way. But if you go all the way back to the beginning, God established the relationship between humans and the outdoors and the animals before he established the family, before he established the church. And we were meant to have this connection with the world around us. It's the first thing that the first relationship that besides our relationship with him was with this environment, the sea, the animals in the sea, the animals on the land. And we the outdoors is where we find ourselves. It's where people were meant to be. I mean, the outdoors were created for people, and that's the biggest thing. If it, that I would say is the outdoors is about people. It heals people. It draws people together. It story of my marriage. It holds people together when other things can't. It really is about people. And if people can understand that they're cutting their own feet off whenever they ignore the outdoors and hunting and wildlife and our relationship with the outdoors, that we need it. We people need the outdoors just like the outdoors needs people.
Yeah.
So
It's really interesting. Thank you for saying that. Um, as a former coach of multiple sports, there was always a saying that I heard, and it was, "Well, that player needs the game a whole lot more than the game needs that player." you know, and so often in life, that's how we're viewed. That's how we view ourselves. That's how we view others, and it's like, but what you're saying right there is that the outdoors, everyone's welcome.
absolutely,
And the outdoors needs people just as bad as we need the outdoors.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I mean, the outdoors is one of the only places I can think of that literally everyone is accepted and welcome.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't find that. You can find different spaces and corners in society where you fit and is your niche, and but really the outdoors is the one space that really truly does accept everyone.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. May I reuse that? May I share that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Yeah, my big thing. So I've always been a backpacker, hiker, fisherman. I used to work at a store called REI, which is notorious for like the granola type people of this world,
Yeah.
and through all my different adventures, um, what I learned about that is staying inside the lines versus hunting is going outside the boundaries. And that's what fascinated me and captivated me just as just about as much as anything else within hunting was this idea of there's so many societal pressures. Don't color outside the lines, don't do this, don't do that. And in hunting it was the world's your oyster, and if you don't actually go seek, you won't find. So
Yeah.
if your seeking takes you off this path because that intrigues you, there is a reward on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh
So,
yeah, I love that.
um, Miss Lola of the South, m- it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us for an episode. One of the things I like to ask a lot of my guests is, what has hunting done for you? You've shared this a little bit through your stories, and so not to be redundant, but what has hunting done for you in your own personal life?
Mm. It's brought me, it's exposed me to my true purpose. That's, I mean, what, because that translates into my purpose as a wife unified to my husband, my purpose as a mom, and the way I've passed these things on to my children. And I'm waiting for my grandchildren to be old enough to pass it on to them, the way I pass these things on to students or people that I take along with me. Um, God used the outdoors and hunting, specifically hunting, to find my purpose, to break down any area I thought I had control of, because nothing will teach you that you have no control. Like, it just literally will rip it from you. And to really be at the mercy of creation and the creator. That's where I found my purpose.
Mm, love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of the podcast, everybody. If you enjoyed this and you wanna share the good word, please like, share, subscribe to the podcast. Go give it a rating. Go give Lola of the South a follow on social media and let her know how much you really enjoyed her sharing her story. I want you to be encouraged. Be of good cheer. Know that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. You're not a result of some circumstance in your life, that you actually get to create your own existence as we go about moving forward. And each moment is an opportunity and a blessing. I want you all to be blessed and be of good cheer. Thank you so much for tuning in this episode. Remember that hunting is human, and it's up to us to redefine how the non-hunting public interprets that as we get to share our stories, because these stories are what are impactful and allow us to connect human to human. Thank you so much. If you guys want to know more about Soul Seekers Nation, go to soulseekersnation.com. Go check out our online store and help support our mission of mentorship as conservation. Remember that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. I'm Johnny Mack for Lola of the South. Be blessed, everybody. Freedom on, and stay soulful.
If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship as conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.